and it's just one of those things. You know, like it's just one of those things.
Developers come and go, but they don't contribute to the
developers come and go,
larger sort of knowledge base that CCP should fucking have.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Push to Talk.
Hello, Horrendous.
Everybody else?
Oh,
Horrendous.
Sorry, guys. I'm just going to cough throughout the show. I'm not going to mute because it's impossible with my coughing. Yesterday, I was about on my deathbed. Today, I feel much better.
He is arisen.
Probably because of the massive amount of drugs I've probably been given.
Give me all the drugs.
I mean, I will cough, but
show me where the drugs are.
It was not lupus.
No, they were not illegal. They were all legally prescribed. I was really sick yesterday, though. Well, the whole since Thanksgiving, really, but got worse. So I'm not dead yet, you know, as they say. So, but I am feeling better. So, I actually got sleep last night. But I do want to introduce you all to the star of the show today. This little guy right here. Anybody know what this is? Anyone? Bueller? You're not allowed, Caleb. You're not allowed to say Caleb.
It's a top FC.
I know.
It's a top FC.
Top FC.
It's a what?
It's a top FC.
Top FC.
It's what the Imperium uses as FCs.
Just needs a couple little, you know, with stem and some leaves. Anybody out there?
You need
it's
a
an apple pear.
To put on top.
That's right, me too. Yeah. It's an apple pear, and I've never eaten an apple pear, so I think I'm going to eat this apple pear. It just arrived in our house today.
You put a little headset on it, and then you plug it in with USB, and it's an FC.
Holy shit, that's good.
Yeah, apple pear is pretty good.
It might need to ripen a little bit more. They just came in today. They're kind of fuzzy.
What do you mean by fuzzy? Like, does it have a?
Well, like it just feels like maybe there's a tiny fuzz on it. Maybe not.
Oh, not like a peach. Not as much as a peach. Oh, okay.
That's weird.
That's something that I've always not too fond of when it comes to peaches.
I do not I do not like peaches except in very specific situations. Like, I mean, you know, canned peaches like
come in a can. Yeah.
in their own juice. And I don't like light, I don't like the sugar added stuff. And with cottage cheese. Even with like a trio of cottage cheese, chicken salad, and tuna salad over lettuce. That's an excellent combination for them. Excuse me.
I haven't tried before.
Could eat a peach for hours.
You could eat a peach for hours?
I knew it was gonna eventually, end up in this situation, in this conversation.
My Americanism is being questioned at the no sugar added. Not with, in their own syrup. Peaches in their own sugar.
No sugar added is fine for Americans, as long as he applies plenty of high fructose corn syrup.
Exactly. Yep. Drizzle it in it.
Peaches in their natural juices, man, are sweet enough. That's a syrup that's just amazing too. But I don't like eating a peach like this. Like apples, apparently pears. I'm a big pear fan. Peeling an orange. Apple pears, definitely on the list now.
I wonder if, but then again, I don't really ever, have this. I think I've only ever had it once time, but it's a very American thing. I consider it to be a very American thing, but like a candied apple as such, I imagine an apple pear would probably work pretty well with that.
Well, I go full Brit fag where if you give me pears, I will slice them. I will do a short crust and actually make a pie with cinnamon and then either whipped cream or custard on top. There you go.
Yeah.
Because that works all the time. It's amazing. Or crumble. A crumble is actually a decent solution, even though it's a lazy mode of a pie.
The sweetest thing off a tree that I've ever eaten is a fig. It's just sugar times 10. Are there any Eid related? Hey, the first 20 single player. The first 20 minutes, we're not allowed to talk about Eve stuff.
Eve players need to eat
back
too.
In the day,
Yeah.
my mother back in the day used to make sort of like a like crunchy sort of thing, it was like a sort of rice crispy. I don't know whether you get rice. Do you get Rice Krispies over there, or is it?
Yes, we have Rice
call it,
Krispies. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure they were.
But yeah,
You know,
the same thing.
we
Okay,
have
cool.
them in their original
But
Klingon.
But it is basically sort of like Rice Krispies in sort of like in syrup with dates. Like and it's you kind of like it's chilled down to the point where you can cut it into like squares.
Mm-hmm.
It's fucking lovely.
We do Rice Krispie treats with marshmallows melted. That's called the traditional Rice Krispie treat. And they used to, you can add peanut butter into those too. But so many kids without peanut butter allergies. I don't care. We make them with peanut butter in our house. And then again, they cool down. You cut them up. Yeah, you can actually, people like them so much that Kellogg's actually makes them pre-made that way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you can just go out and order a box of Rice Krispie treats, and they're in, foil wrapper, and kids take them to school, eat them.
They're the ones with like sort of semi like marshmallowy.
The marshmallowy ones.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think we can get them over here.
By the way, much sweeter around the top area or bottom area here. It must be the bottom area. Significantly, really good. Yeah, we'll just eat like blueberries, strawberries, chill them, bring them down to the pool.
And actual, one of the weird things is like artificial blueberry flavoring tastes like ass compared to actual blueberries. Like legit.
I'm not even sure. I don't know. We have
Glow Hollow Meta show. I think is in like
2 hours. 2 hours. About an hour and 2 hour and 50 minutes.
Okay.
I'm going to eat this whole thing on the show. I don't even care if it's uncouth or terrible.
The meta show's in 3 hours.
It's in 3 hours.
3 hours, sorry.
I thought it was in 3 hours, yeah. Because I was about to say, we do our 2 hours, and then we have an hour break between...
3 p.m. Wisconsin time.
I'm on drugs, so I don't know.
It always has to be done in Wisconsin time.
Right.
Wisconsin time.
It's like for Imperium, Wisconsin time is, Central time. Like,
yes.
There's no other time except Wisconsin time for Imperium.
The world is East Coast time. Sorry. Fuck you all.
America centric.
Hey Eric, I tend to agree with you, but Imperium runs in time.
I know.
Tornadoes, plural.
Oh, we had what was it? 25 tornadoes last night through the Midwest. I think they said
what's going on? It was 2012 suddenly becoming an actual thing over there.
I think they said in
look out, and there's like 4 tornadoes in sight. Like,
yeah, and Arendis, maybe you heard this, but I don't know if it was the previous 20 or 30 years. They've had about 7 what they call emergency tornado warnings. Last night they had 8.
Yeah,
it was something like that. I mean, we have a number of facilities that had people working overnight, and buildings collapsed on some folks. So whole towns looking like they're wiped out. So prayers out to all those people. Certainly from us, if anybody was affected.
In the last 6 months, we've had 3 tornado warnings.
Wow.
We never have tornado warnings. We don't get them.
Well, my wife...
I'm on a goddamn fucking island.
Oh, wow.
Christ.
So, my wife, from the age of 8 through when she married me in her mid-20s, lived in Kansas City, Kansas. Not Missouri, the Kansas side. And in the first 10 years of our marriage, she had more tornado warnings here where we live than in Kansas. It's kind of crazy.
That's a bit mental.
It is. now she's almost been married to me as old as she was when we got married. It's kind of wild.
I wonder if the UK is ever going to get like some pretty freakish, like severe weather at some point with all the changes and stuff like that to the world. Because we're just not used to it. We're not used to like extreme weather at all. Like we hear about tornadoes and we go like, oh well, sucks to be over there. But like, if and when it happens in the UK, we're not ready for it in any way, shape, or form. Like, we'd just be totally fucked.
I've seen a ton of water.
None of our houses have like basements. Like aside from the super old ones, but like and obviously, you'd think because it's UK and that kind of thing, you'd have a lot of super old houses, but like actually not that much, really comparatively.
It is actually kind of rare here not to have one where I live.
Yeah, it's rare to have one in the UK. It's rare to have a house with a basement in the UK.
And I think in my area, one of the big reasons for that, and the other thing that they will do is, in some cases, they will build the second story bigger than the first story because there's something the way the taxes are calculated in square footage. Basement doesn't count, and second floor that's bigger than the first floor doesn't count for some reason or something weird. But which is how they calculate square footage for property tax.
Oh, okay.
Very strange. I don't know.
I mean, if people in the UK have to like get out of the way of a tornado, like I don't exactly know how we would do it. Like,
does that mean that houses on stilts are tax evasion?
No, every state has different things. And so there are certain states where you will see houses on stilts, like South Carolina, North Carolina, a lot. I think maybe some in the New York, New Jersey area, but I don't know for sure. But I do know. Yeah, along the beach, on stilts. Not unusual. Also creates a great place to park your cars.
The one thing which the UK does have, which seemingly is not a big thing, or I wouldn't say big thing. It's not like a ubiquitous thing in America. Is like pretty much all of our houses are brick in some way, shape, or form. We don't have wooden houses in the UK, really at all.
Really, everything there isn't half timbered?
Yeah.
Wow.
Legit.
It used to be, right?
Mass media has lied to me. Anyway, the one important thing to understand, though, is you don't get out of the way of a tornado.
Mm-mm.
You don't, because they move unpredictably.
Yeah,
what you do
true,
is you go into the basement and find someplace structurally sound.
Well, that's what we're saying. They don't have basements, so where the hell are they going to go?
We don't have basements. So,
right. So you need to get to
we
the
just
lowest
have to.
point. You basically need to get to the lowest point in your building and get into a bathtub or something and lay down.
Yeah. We'll do what Indiana Jones did and jump into a fridge.
Yeah, that'll work, and it protects you from nuclear weapons too.
Escape nuclear weapons. Yeah.
It was a very messy apple pear.
That was such a ridiculous scene.
Somebody says UK stops functioning as soon as they see one flake of snow. That sounds like Washington D.C. And if I could, if I was snow miser, I'd send so much snow to D.C. to keep it from working that would blow your mind.
Technically, one
from working. DC keeps DC from working.
Technically, if one flake of snow drops on Christmas Day, it's a white Christmas in the UK. Like, I personally think that's a cop out.
I don't think we're going to get a white Christmas this year. I mean, it's 60 degrees here today. That's like freaking unheard of. So,
McLeod,
Also-
what did he just say? What is that in real degrees?
I have no idea.
60 degrees Fahrenheit.
6 degrees Fahrenheit is like what? Like I don't know what 10 degrees. I don't know. Fuck knows.
Let's see what
Google it. Anybody with like a
Well, technically,
smart speaker or whatever, just ask.
Technically, we are supposed to get snow on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day right now. It's going to be a low of 32 and a high of 39. So, AM snow showers on Christmas Day and PM snow showers on Christmas Eve. That works for me. That's perfect.
Okay, it's 15 actual degrees, McLeod, which is basically what? That's almost summery.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is a golfing day, man.
Yeah.
Except I go out and golf. I'll just be coughing.
Well, in Britland, it's beach day.
30s? Yeah, fuck yeah.
Mankini weather. Never.
Wow.
Hello there, Don. Sorry, guys.
Dawn here. Wild Dawn has appeared.
I have a broccoli casserole cooking.
Oh, I love broccoli.
So you just said some things that seemingly didn't really seem to work together.
Broccoli
What?
casserole. Good
It's just-
shit,
You
man.
got a bunch of broccoli with cheese on it,
Yeah.
cooking in a casserole pan.
Seriously,
Yeah.
Arendis, you know that everything becomes edible if you add cheese and bacon to it. You can eat shoe soles if you add cheese and bacon.
Maybe.
Yeah, there's really nothing you can't improve with the right kind of cheese.
Yeah, so
I like
I mixed in. I took the recipe that I had, but I didn't have like onion. I was like, I don't need fucking onions. Fuck that. So it's just broccoli with sharp cheddar and Parmesan, garlic, mushrooms, cream of mushroom soup, and a little bit of
Mhm.
mayo for fat. And then on top is a layer of cheese and crumbled up crackers.
Well, I'm going straight from here, and I will cook my wild boar sausage, which is going to be awesome.
You know,
Sure, it will.
in the last couple weeks, I'm going to cough again, so I apologize to everybody. We have been doing a lot of ordering out, right, and having it delivered, and we've just had like really shitty luck. Everybody, I mean, even some of our favorite restaurants that we eat that are privately owned around here have really screwed up our orders, right? Like we had a Chinese order, and they forgot all the rice. Like, who does that? It's like, when we order, I mean, it's like, $150 because we're freaking got a lot of people here. And they forgot all the rice for every entree. It just blows my mind, right? And then they offered us $5 back because of it. And
I've had it where.
You've ruined the experience. Like,
Oh no,
Yeah.
I can beat this story. We always get PF Chang's for Christmas or some kind of expensive Chinese food if we can. So this is Christmas Eve.
Going to beat it?
are you Jewish?
No.
Saying. You know who?
Okay, so this is Christmas Eve, and but we don't like to cook on Christmas Eve, so that's why we go out. So it's Christmas Eve. We decide we're going to drive to Terre Haute to meet up with my sister and brother-in-law because they have a ton of family members to visit, and instead of making them drive all the way to Indy, they could stay there and see some more family members longer. And we're like, it's not a big deal. It's an hour and a half drive.
Right.
But we pick up the food, we drive an hour and a half, meet up in a hotel that we've got rented, so we have a nice table and everything. And we start unpacking the food, and we realize there's no rice with a single thing.
That's what we had.
But this is Christmas Eve, and we just drove an hour and a half with our food. There's no option to get more rice anywhere. Now, they did give us some stuff back, but it was just more of like, did nobody decide to check the bags before we left?
Anybody want to guess what
Apparently
they
not.
offered me because they forgot our rice?
You said $5.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know I said that.
I think we got
We
like
went-
25 or something.
Well, I ended up with 10, and I like tip even on takeout, right? Pretty heavy. And they were funding my tip too. I was like, Jimmy, come on. And
It happened.
Oh yeah, well, I just thought it was just and by the way, it's a 40-minute round trip to this place to go back, so I wasn't driving 40 minutes, right? But yeah, I mean, it didn't matter where we ordered from; it was terrible. But I'm gonna say, was it last night? It was last night. That's how bad my memory is, folks. It was last night. Oh, excuse me. Now I'm burping after eating an apple pear. By the way, apple pear, excellent. So get them if you can. We ordered from the Olive Garden. Now that means something to the Americans. I don't think there's Olive Gardens outside of the U.S., but they're kind of, they're just like easy Italian food, right?
Renders, please help Eric here.
So anyway, the order was perfect.
Look, the Olive Garden is Italian food for people who can't cook Italian food.
Yeah. But it was easy because we just, it's Friday night, right?
Exactly. It's like going to, I don't know. It's like a step up from Taco Bell as your Mexican.
So we really wanted the salad. We like the salad. I like their soups as well. And we did some Asian pasta. Everything was perfect. Actually, everything tasted pretty good. It was. My wife can't taste yet, so. But we liked everything else, and giant salad. We still have more breadsticks, I think, than we can eat. But it was actually really good compared to everything that we had bought, and we had gone even to some higher end. Yeah, she did, and so did my one son. My other son and my youngest daughter did not get COVID at all.
Can I just interject here that on principle, when going to restaurants, I'm against ordering soups and porridge. Stuff that you can easily make at home without actually requiring any real gastronomical or culinary skills should not be ordered at a restaurant.
I love their soups. Sorry. I don't care. If I like it, I order it.
Sometimes, well, the thing is, sometimes, you can make it at home, but a lot of people don't have the time to be able to make
everybody's been sick, you don't
sometimes
anything.
There's sometimes soups, certain soups they take a long fucking time to make.
Yeah, but they take care of themselves.
They do, yeah, but that's the thing. If you're, it's very much based around whether you have the time to do it or not. And if you don't have the time to do it, fuck it, go out and get it from a restaurant.
Well, we traditionally order. We go out to restaurants on Friday and Saturday nights. That's our days that we go out. But with me coughing, especially yesterday, and it was terrible. And we just, even if you're not able to infect anybody and you're over COVID, just don't make people uncomfortable by going out to places, right? That's just our personal feeling. So why do it, right?
Because it's there. Wait, no, that's not.
We could just order it in. And plus, we restaurants have been so hit over the last couple of years here. So we like to, if we're going to spend money, we like to spend money where we can help, But yes, I like to make my own soup, very much so. We have an Instapot, which makes it super easy to do. But I love making soups. Even there's a great recipe for the Olive Garden Tuscan soup out there. Most people don't know that the green in it isn't spinach. It's actually what do you call that? Terrible.
Cilantro?
What?
Cilantro?
No.
Parsley?
Nope.
Kale. I thought it was. You said the you said something in a very negative kind of way. I was like, it's probably going to be kale then.
Yeah, most people don't like, but that's what's in it. And
kale is the one that looks like you just picked it from a clover on the field somewhere, right?
I'm wondering if I should tell the clover on the field story.
I don't think that's kale. I'm just responding to Caleb. I don't think that's Caleb.
I don't think I want to admit to the Clover story yet. Maybe another day.
Sorry, no, that's rucola or something like that. That looks like
arugula.
Something you picked on
Arugula,
the local fucking field.
Oh yeah,
Because you do.
Family show.
It's like
Pampers.
when Eric goes golfing and he brings back the rucola. It's like, here, honey, I brought food.
I bring nothing back from a
I have
fairway.
hunted to veggies.
A fairway wouldn't even have any of that stuff in it, man.
No, but in the rough, right?
There's just grass in the rough, man. What kind of golf courses you play? Arugula National. Our rough and first gut, all arugula. I do play. I play good golf courses usually. I don't play many bad ones. So we're over our 20-minute limit. Do we want to talk how the New World devs said, "Oh my God, we screwed up. We're sorry, players." What happened in Eve?
Well, and then they did the same thing as the Eve devs, right? They said, "Oh, sorry, we messed up. We're going to fix it," and then they brought out something that's not really fixed, but looks a little bit.
That is very much that is very subjective because at the moment, according to you, Caleb, like the whole thing's fucked up entirely. So, like fixing entirely going back and fixing what they were intending to do isn't fixing what you have issues with in the game.
Exactly, and hence it's exactly the same as adding waste to mining, now named residue, which doesn't really change the fact that you do not want waste in EVE Online.
There's nothing compared to it because, CCP just changing the name of wastage to residue isn't fixing or going back or making it better. It's like that is in no way comparative to what New World devs did. Like, no way comparative, dude. Like, I'm sorry. You got blinkers on there, mate.
Is it moist residue?
I mean, I'm
moist.
Isn't that called dew?
Iceland, it wouldn't be. It'd be frozen at that point.
Somebody's brain's frozen in Iceland.
I mean, yeah. No, I would very much concur. I mean, I don't know. I don't really know where to start when it comes to CCP, like in their most recent sort of things, like the whole kind of the whole like what's the mining barge? Is it a mining barge or is it an actual exhumer that they changed? I can't remember which one it was, but they fucked with the agility with it. It's like, why? Why would you why? Like literally just why?
No. They didn't touch the agility. They touched the mass.
They touched the mass, which affected the agility. Yeah,
which is ridiculous.
I didn't say. I didn't mean they're yeah, sorry. Maybe
they
slightly incorrect.
They increased the mass.
They affected the
agility.
Yeah, they affected the agility by touching the mass for whatever fucking reason. We're just gonna double the mass. Why? Are you doubling the size of the ship? Are you doubling what's what the ship is fucking made out of? Like what?
Are we talking about how the ships make no fucking sense and it's great?
I mean, there's a degree of suspending disbelief when it comes to Eve ships to some degree, but they're taking the piss.
And they took a mid slot away. 2, actually, he said.
Yeah. The Procurer got fucked in the butt, but
it's because
it's a worthless ship anyways now.
What?
So fuck it.
It's because CCP realized, oh no, people are going to use Procurers now. We're going to have to, we can't have that. We can't have players actually circumvent our plans.
Can we talk about how none of the mining ships have enough CPU to fit things properly, unless you either max mine it and you don't have enough CPU to even put anything in the mid slots.
That's what
or you got to use an implant to try and like squeeze in some shield stuff. That they're like, oh, we're gonna make these ships tankier, and it's like, how?
Dawn, you could always do what I've done on my exhumers.
Oh my god, you should see his is worth $5 billion.
I mean, the faction strip miners.
He's got a syndicate damage control or harvester, Pitham A types.
The faction strip miners use less CPU. I mean,
it's true.
I mean, if you got it, why not use it, right?
And no, Dawn, I haven't actually put all of that shit on them.
Shh.
I just designed that fit for you because you asked for a good fit, and that's a good fit.
I mean, like the T2s aren't so bad fitting wise because they have T2 resist, but the T1s are just like borked. I would just give them like 30 more CPU and they'd be golden. They could fit some tank, mine, fast, blah blah blah. Not this whole you need to have a choice. Listen, it's not a good choice when your choice is cutting your hand off or your foot. That's not good gameplay.
I just think it's brave of you to ask Horrendous to come up with a very tight OP fit and not expect the build to be fucking crazy.
We talk about fits all the time, so
yeah. And I've given her actually the fit that I gave her first, because she was asking for something that would get good yield but actually be able to fit everything, used compact shield hardeners and no faction shit on it at all.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I ended up making myself.
Using, yeah.
I still made it myself technically, but it ended up aligning up exactly with what you made almost.
Well, yeah, I mean that's basically the only way you're going to fit it with the 3 mining laser upgrades in the lows.
Yeah.
You can get back 10 points of CPU and upgrade one of those hardeners if you put a damage control in. But you're not going to do that.
Have we talked about how there's too much ore? Or are we not going to talk about that?
Too much ore?
How can you even say those words? That does not make any sense.
I like the fact that we've got people bitching that the barges and exhumers don't have enough ore hold space because they're like the Mackinac should have 100,000.
Be amazing.
The
50,000 on the Hulk.
The Hulk should have 50,000.
Yeah.
Just like the hell. No,
that'd just be a brick wall.
I'm still reeling from the fact that Dawn just said like, should we talk about how there's too much ore? Like,
yeah, that makes no sense coming out of
no. Here's the example. Here's the example
version.
So they give me a cake. I could reasonably eat a cake. And that was originally was a cake. Now they
not say too much cake.
Listen. Listen. So they give me a cake. I can get through a cake in a reasonable amount of time. Now they give me 10 cakes, and I can't finish them before they all spoil. What was the point of the other cakes? I can't get to them. All I can do is look at them, and I can't finish them.
But now you can have a cake party and invite friends to eat cake.
And we still can't finish the cake before it spoils because there's too much cake. And so it's like, why are you doubling the ore when we can't feasibly get to it? And like I've seen the post on Reddit where some guy's like, we got to all of our ore with 9 people for like 10, like it was like 5 or 6 holds, a booster and a hauler or something like that. And someone like
2-day frack.
Yeah, and someone asked like, how long was the frack? He said, oh, it was 3 weeks. And I'm like, well, that's Pitten's amount of ore. Have you seen how much is on a 3-week frack? It's not that much compared to a max frack. Oh, and instead of they said they were going to add more ore to the moon. So everyone was hoping they would just make the rocks bigger because then the Rorquals could sit on them longer. No. That would have been too easy. They decided to just make double the amount of rocks. So instead of 50 rocks, now we have 100.
Oh yeah, because they decided that instead of choosing to change one value, they decided to change a different value.
It's just bullshit. It's like, all right, well now I've got this belt of teeny tiny rocks everywhere, and Highsec's having this problem where the rocks, although when they spread them all out like crazy, like apparently you have to warp between rocks in some of the Highsec belts now because some of them were too close. So they're like, okay, spread them out, and now they're like kilometers apart, like 50 to 60 kilometers apart. It's just a fucking mess. Like, the whole patch is just bad code.
Has anybody figured out that people come to these games to have fun and feel better?
No, of course. No, they don't. They
don't. Okay.
They're forced into it. You know, they don't come and play EVE Online to have fun. They're
not here
there because they're
voluntarily.
forced.
Mm.
You've paid a large amount of money, and you feel obligated to have to play it, and because of that, they're gonna just, CCP have realized that, you feel obligated to play their game, and so they're gonna punish you for it.
Well, this comes down to something.
You feel obligated.
Well, something we discussed the other night was the fact that.
So what is the end result of this?
Well, traditionally, EVE Online has been one of those games where you can have it running in the background and not necessarily be very active, but kind of being like tinkering a little bit, right? Like messing with things and making sure that things are working the way you want them to and stuff like that. You're basically in some sort of holding pattern and maintenance mode. You're not entirely AFK playing, but you're just nursing your markets, your industry, your mining, your ratting and stuff like that, right? So you can be logged in, but not really do anything. But CCP then started down this path of you have to be active. Well, that's fine if by that you mean you have to be active to improve and increase your efficiency, right? But if you're removing the maintenance mode and AFK, I'm just logged in, you're basically saying, fuck off if you're not willing to dedicate yourself 100%. It's like, okay, then I'm going to log out. This is not the right design for EVE Online. EVE Online, because of its PvP nature and its social nature, you need to be on standby all the time. I compared this to the fire department way of working, right? You're on call 24 hours, and whether something happens or not is really, you have to be there for when shit happens. Just like in EVE, when someone attacks or someone forms a fleet and stuff like that. The fact that CCP is now pushing that away and focusing on active gameplay only and have killed all these play styles, that just means that there's no incentive for me to play or have secondary or tertiary accounts.
But surely, because it's CCP's designing this, it's a better design.
Yeah, you'll be back or something. I'll be back. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't.
I mean, to be fair, like, if you can AFK in HiSec, like, it's been almost CCP's standard operating procedure to make HiSec more, like, be the de facto best place to make money, right? So,
well, I'm not against that necessarily, but it needs to be tied into a meaningful way. Like, I don't understand why they didn't just increase the demand on Tritanium and Pyrite and then buffed the availability of this in something like HiSec, so you could go back to the interdependency where HiSec creates value very slowly, but in a very meaningful and very required way. So everything needs Tritanium and everyone needs ISK. That can be printed very slowly, semi-AFK-ish in HiSec. I'm fine with that because the rest of the universe then has a different income bracket entirely. CCP did the opposite, right?
It was like just, some motherfuckers always want to ice skate up a hill.
Well, but the point is that them removing Tritanium demands on things is actually not good for the health of the game.
Yeah, it made no fucking sense.
It makes no sense.
I understand adjusting it or, messing with the numbers a little bit, but Tritanium, which is supposed to be the most plentiful thing, and it's great for high-sec income people just because it's consistent. It may not be high, but it's consistent. The fact that they took it out of capitals, as much as they did is crazy, but I also get that they were trying to decouple the price of capitals from subcaps as much as possible. But instead of creating like capital class ore that only spawns in certain areas, maybe like 0.5 systems in high sec and lower or something like that, right? Capital ore. That would be that way you could truly decouple them from each other.
You don't have to. It would still be decoupled if you did something like if you had done vertical integration nerf in a meaningful way, where instead of adding all the kitchen ingredients in everything, you basically may do that with you use all the kitchen ingredients, but you don't put them in the same thing. You spread them out so you actually get a natural volatility arising where you kind of end up risking running out of the thing that you specifically need for this specific build. And then the whole thing is, why are they not also using the same level of thinking when you're talking about fits? I keep coming back to the fact that it feels to me like the actual developers in EVE Online that plays the actual game or have played it have been sidelined and they're not being listened to. So we get these things with weird mass increases and all of the spices from the spice rack in the industry. It's like, this is not how you do this. This is not how EVE is supposed to work.
From everything we've seen, Fozzie is definitely not involved with the team that did this.
Yeah, Fozzie, Rise,
anybody with some actual knowledge. Was anybody with some actual technical knowledge in of the game clearly are not involved.
Yeah, can we make the executive producer Elise Randolph? Thank you very much.
God, no.
Well, at least then you have someone running the show that actually knows and plays the game or have played it.
I mean, in all fairness, at least then we'd have an executive producer that we know can take a pie to the face.
That too. No, but I'm semi-serious. I think it was last week. Was it Nom Nom that said that maybe Fozzie should be EP?
Yeah,
and I think it's the same thing, right? Fozzie actually knows the game, and so does Elise. Why can't we get some of them up in the higher rungs of CCP to make the decisions? Because they will at least listen and understand when players say, well, have you considered that if you increase the mass of this ship instead of the actual
instead of like reducing the agility or
exactly instead of agility, it's like if you want the align time to change, do it on agility, not on mass of the ship, because you're making this whole mess of where the law stops working. Similar hulls size wise should have a similar mass. This is just logic. Wormholes, because these things are fatter because CCP wanted them to be slower to align. It's like shit.
The thing is, it's to me, it's more like it's more about like a holistic approach. If you're going to like change the mass of like something, or if you're going to change the agility of something, then you're going to have to also go in and actually, do the work and change also the. If you're going to change the agility of a ship, right, reduce the agility of the ship, then you're going to have to go in and, if it's a T2 ship, you're going to have to reduce the amount of fucking thrusters that, is required for that ship.
What was that, Eric?
No.
Oh.
But it's the same with ABs, right? And it's also going to affect this thing. It's like you have completely messed up the whole ship by doing this. What are you thinking? Where are the people that are usually doing the whole rebalancing of ships and ship designs? Didn't they take part in any of these meetings?
No, they didn't, because they weren't part of they clearly weren't part of the right circle for whatever reason.
Is Fozzie and Rise gagged in the basement or something?
No, Rise has a kid.
That's close enough.
It's like, it's a fucking joke. That's what it is. It's a fucking joke at this point.
Well, it feels like they're panic turning knobs and dials, and it does not make any sense. They don't have a big plan. They don't have actual meetings where they go into detail of what is this actually going to do.
There's a point that, I don't. So it's a case of like, do we trust them to get back on track, or do we not?
Have they earned it?
Have they? Well, I mean, there's definitely a question of whether they have earned the trust in, from us to, for us to sort of wait for them to get, the game back on track, or to change the way that they're kind of like designing the game, or designing or iterating.
Well, I don't trust them until they actually come out and say that they're going to do this, right? Because they need to do something very similar to post Summer of Rage. They need to go back and look at so many of the things that they have rolled out the past 8 years that have been completely left hanging and unfinished, and say, okay, we are going to take these and take a look at them, have a discussion. Can we tweak them and change them so they actually are healthy in the game? Until they do something like that, I don't trust them at all, and I am not likely to play EVE Online very much.
So you want them to get the fiction team to write a fictional autograph? Apology, I mean.
Yeah. I want the law guys to write an apology on behalf of Hilmer again.
I do not give a flying fuck about like apology letters. Apology letters mean dick all if nothing changes. Like,
exactly.
Action speaks louder than words. And that's
bring back Soundwave. Thank you very much.
Show by action that they understand that, like, maybe what they're doing is more harming the game than actually fixing the game at this point. They don't. Yeah, well, the money factor is going to come in, but like that's the thing. Like, if you're saying like, oh, they're only concerned with the sort of money side of things, like, then maybe CCP should actually look at the amount of money that they're bringing in this year based on compared to last year, and maybe consider that what they're doing might be was up.
For the
I wonder why that
EVIP,
would
yes.
be.
Keep in mind, they just announced a new comic with Dark Horse.
Well, it looks nice, but lore-wise, it's got so many mistakes that the lore people are screaming their heads off.
Just the images are where the hell is this capsulator supposed to be, and how is a pod supposed to give them that much fucking room? But I mean,
they are making one with the EVIP, which the phone, and it's mashed in, right? They don't split out what EVE Online is making, right? Is EVE Online on the trajectory up, down, remaining even? I don't know, right? That's the details that they didn't share in the quarterly call. I can't imagine. I mean, unless they have, trained the new people just to, buy Plex out the ass, right? Usually when Plex is, 25% off or whatever, I buy, $500, whatever the highest, thing of it is, and to keep Plex around. But, this round, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, 25% off is like, nah, fuck you.
Yeah, but all this money making aside, and the incentive from CCP, they need to get serious on fixing the game. They can't hold it off in this maintenance mode forever, because it's going to teeter out and die if they do that. And I was semi-serious when I said bring back someone like CCP Soundwave. Of course, they can't afford Soundwave. They would at least appoint someone inside that has a similar understanding of the fundamentals of EVE Online. This whole thing of letting devs in CCP be responsible for things when they don't actually really understand the depth of the game. It's fine if you only play one little niche, but then you need to acknowledge your own ignorance, and you can't be responsible without having some sort of oversight by someone that's more knowledgeable.
I'm still absolutely intrigued as to how they've made more money this year.
I think when you look at the the phone app, and maybe there's a prepayment on the IP on the comic. I mean that's the only thing I can think of. Unless they have displaced all the subscription models with people buying Plex and buying other things online. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. Because I used to pay annual subscriptions on I don't know, 10 or 12 accounts.
The
I don't do that
thing is,
anymore.
we know. Because the thing is, we know from third-party statistics that compared to last year, we're down in terms of concurrent players.
Right.
So if we're up in terms of the amount of money, but down in terms of the amount of concurrent players, then like what's going on? Like there must be, a small number of people must be paying more. Must be giving more money, right? Like that can be the only logical, explanation of what the data points that we know, right?
Right.
More
Right.
money,
And the
less
PCU's
players.
running around 22K. Right. I get there's peaks and valleys in that, right? But the average is 22K, which is terrible. I mean, that's like nobody in space, right?
The thing is, Frat has always been in the room, and they've been in the room. They've been playing and been a part of Tranquility for much longer than just this year. So
well, I think the conclusion is that from of course our selective sampling, but it must be newer players that are doing the credit card swiping, right? Because everyone I talk to that are veterans are doing the exact opposite. So if CCP are increasing their money making, they're doing this on the back of the new players. And of course, I'm fine with CCP making money. It's just, is this viable? Is this something that can be sustained? Because if these players start feeling that this is some sort of pay-to-win game where they have to credit card like that, I don't think they're going to stick around very much.
Well, I remember the number is on the EVE IP, not on EVE Online. So you really don't know where the money's coming from, right? They're just up.
It may not be coming from players at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's off selling the IP, right? What are the fees for that? And that's what we don't know, the structure of those. But I think we can logically say it's probably not coming from the game itself, right? And I mean, and if the game itself isn't any good, and you have players attriting from it, then they're going to spend less money on that side in development and everything, because that's what happens. That's the spiral of games, right? Oh, we're not getting any money out of it, so we're not going to really spend more money trying to make it better. We just let it go. We've already got our ROI out of the product anyway, and this is our profit model going forward. And then when it's not profitable, then we just shut it down. I mean, that's...
Well, sure, but CCP doesn't really have anything else.
I understand that, but they've always...
Shutting it down would just basically kill the company.
They've always thought they had the next big idea, right? It's like the pyramid scheme guys. Hey, I got this new idea. We'll all make money off of this. And then nothing ever happens, right? I mean, they really haven't had a successful game.
You just need to buy in with me,
Yeah, buy in with me at my level. But yeah, I mean, that's really where CCP is at. They're just selling the IP. So the question becomes, who just started their video on air? It looks like maybe Dawn. Yeah, Dawn in the car.
There's a boob. Sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, I mean, I think we've been in run and maintain for quite a while already, and right, as long as they're on the profit side, right, you don't hear anything about them buying new hardware and replacing the cluster, right? That cluster's pretty old. They upgrading their cluster? They upgrading their hardware? No. Right?
I think we would have felt it as well if they added some significant hardware upgrades, right?
Yeah, I mean, the newer chips have all kinds of feature functionality built into them that offload stuff off the main CPUs that the current blades see now and things like that.
The thing is that kind of architecture doesn't really help help the way that the game is coded at the moment, right? Like,
well,
it's all about efficiency chips. It's all about parallel processing and all that kind of jazz.
Well, yeah, that's a lot of what's going on.
It's not about single core speed.
Yeah, I mean, things like encryption and things are being offloaded on the Intel chips, right? So they're not sending through the same pipes that we're sending all the other code through, right? So, I mean, there are little things. Whether they would matter, I really can't say from a technology perspective, because, right, if they're not using encryption to do anything, then it doesn't really matter, right? in that particular case. But I mean, chips are better. They're not trying to make it doesn't look like they're trying to make the code itself more efficient, right? They're just making tweaks and changes. Oh, sorry about that, guys. They're just making little changes, that's all. And I mean, they're trying to make them look big, but they're not, right? What about, the pause code's still there. They're not trying to take it out anymore, right?
Yeah, pause code is still there.
Right. So, and taking that out was going to, open all kind of doors in the code to let them modernize and do all this stuff. You don't see that talk anymore, right? And from my experience in software development, hardware implementation, all of those things, when you're not doing those things, you're not going to keep that product around very much longer. You're just riding it.
Okay. Yeah, they. I mean, it at least from the perception is that they're trying to play up all of their design choices and all of their what they're doing to be fundamental massive changes, but from what we can tell, the actual changes they're just tweaks. They're tweaks to databases and stuff like that.
And they're not meaningful changes to the player. Meaningful changes to the player means this is more fun.
And a reset wouldn't work for Eve.
No, if you reset Eve,
reset would just kill.
Yeah, I'm not coming back.
Reset kills Eve.
Reset it.
A reset kills Eve in at least 3 different ways. You got a lot of people who won't come back. You've got the big organized groups that will come back, but they're already big and organized, so they're going to be
rumble stomping everyone else.
They're going to be on a freaking vertical trajectory. I mean, it's just bad.
Yeah. The game is made that if you want. Here, I always feel that I see there's all these attempts in balancing to make little groups equal to big groups, and it just doesn't work, folks. It's a game about
little groups shouldn't. It's because little groups shouldn't be, shouldn't have the absolute power capabilities of large groups. Relative power groups, yeah, fair enough. But and smaller groups should have certain abilities that larger groups shouldn't. The ability, the ability to be agile. It's. Mm-hmm. But then again, these sort of these ideas and these sort of things being small and therefore being agile because you're small, and being large and therefore not agile because you're large, are kind of alien to the people who are changing Eve right now. So
they don't seem to understand that if they strangle the N+1 and the big dudes, they're going to strangle the entire player base, right? But instead, what we really need is points of failure and pressure points to the big scales, right? The diminishing returns. This is like business 101, about how to do factories and production, that at some point you're going to reach a point where it doesn't really make sense to try and increase and grow because you're getting so little profit per unit. Then you're only doing it to retain and stay competitive in the market and keep your market shares. Yeah. And these designs are simple. They are not rocket science.
You could say that in some way, shape, or form they are doing that, by the way, Caleb. The thing is that the changes that they are doing to make larger scales a lot more difficult, are entirely and completely illogical. And there's people's sort of suspension of disbelief can only go so far. There's a lot of people who kind of go oh well, surely you can believe that this can happen in a game where you can teleport yourself across the map. It's not about whether something is believable in a sci-fi sort of fantasy setting. It's not a believability thing. It's about whether something is just grounded in some understandable kind of logic. It's got nothing to do with believability.
Here's one of the things that CCP fails to grasp, right? And it is, if you've got a war-torn area, is there a lot of business going on where there's war? The answer to that is no. Because you can't mine, you can't have stability, you can't build, you can't do any of that stuff. When they implemented FuzzySoft, they said, hey, we really anticipate, system switching owners every day. And we think that's good for Eve. Right. And if I ever remember who said that, I'll stick an ice pick up their nose. It's the dumbest thing to say. You need an area that is safe, sound, and secure in order for commerce to flourish. That is why so many of those low-sec or a good many of the low-sec folks, right? There were teams, and I think there were some of the teams that, CCP players were on. They would ship to the farthest corner of low-sec, this was many years ago, to do their manufacturing because they couldn't trust their nullsec areas because we were coming out of Cloud Ring and just beating the shit out of all their areas for production. So they hid it from us, and they hid it in lowsec, right? And because they could produce what they needed there, right? And it's they don't understand. They just want fighting all the time, and fighting has to happen in spurts. Okay.
The other thing is, you're talking about
safe, and then you go fight.
The other thing is, you're talking about a persistent MMO, right? If nobody has, if systems get flipped all the time, if every single system is flipping like every 48 hours, there's no permanency, right?
Yeah.
And if you're talking about a long-term persistent MMO, you need a degree of permanency. And you could say, oh well, that's where HiSec comes in. That's where NPC stations come in. Like, to a degree, yes, but there's a massive crowd of people who want their own to be able to determine their own home, determine a lot of aspects of their home, it's about player agency. And if you remove and you strip player agency from the players, they get aggravated and they want to go somewhere else because you're basically removing interesting gameplay loops and gameplay elements from the game.
And by the way, the ice pick up the nose, just so everybody thinks, that's just figurative, right? It's not real. It's not like a real threat. It's just the stupidity of it. I mean, I can't believe the stupidity of that statement. The other thing is there are certain things that you can only build in nullsec. And so you still need that stability in nullsec in an area. It might be a constellation, but hey, guess what? You need the capability to do that. You can't have constant infighting.
And if the reasoning behind not having that permanency for player groups to build the things that you can only build in nullsec, maybe consider actually balancing those ships so that en masse they're not always a problem and always a situation where it's N+1. Honestly,
but seriously,
you break it down. I just want to really quickly do this, Caleb. You break it down. You remove enough combat kind of combat sort of options from subcaps, right? You remove bombs. You remove ECM. You remove sensor dampening. All that kind of jazz. You will end up in a subcap situation where you are with supercaps and titans. You'll end up in a situation where it's N+1, right? Yeah. And that's the problem. You need to add and you need to balance supercaps and titans, and that whole kind of area of gameplay, of capital gameplay, in the same way that you balance subcap gameplay. Because then, and only then, will it not be an N+1 game.
Well, I know that people will hate me for this, but one of the main things that I feel like people keep missing when it comes to how do you create something that is a challenge for bigger groups and creates points of failure. Well, this is really well known from real life. This is things like water supply, energy supply, and stuff like that. So we are talking things like fueling. I'm not saying that it should be a horrible task and tedium. Sorry, Dawn, but it needs to be something that where small groups that are just doing farmsteading, they can have a well with water, and it's fairly easy, and it supplies them with everything they need, right? But if you want to build massive almond farms or citrus farms, the amount of water required will take it from someone else, right? And it's the same with big water caches to be able to tank on sieges. We need to have this in the game. This is the whole aqueduct design. If we do not have something like that, which means that smaller groups or organized groups can kind of dislodge or disrupt bigger groups, and bigger groups actually need to plan ahead and have war caches for sieges and stuff like that. We're never going to get the healthy design between small and big groups. It's just not going to happen. And people keep saying, well, you're just adding tedium, and then this is horrible. Yeah, okay, fine. But then you're just going to have the same problem like we currently have with infinite slots. Slots have no value, structures have no real value, so you don't need more structures and more actual potential income streams. And as long as you add these infinities or hardly reasonable numbers when it comes to fuel requirements and ammo needs and ammo costs, well, the game is not going to be fun. I'm sorry, guys. It's just not.
I feel like Arenda's been trying to say something.
I was just, the problem with trying to do all of this in the way that it needs to be done is that means accepting the outcome of what properly doing this looks like.
Yeah,
and
my God, let's not let Retati do that. This would be
and the outcome of this is stability and peace, because people gravitate into larger groups. Larger groups push for stability. You'll eventually have bigger and bigger wars, but between them you will have peace, because basically if you build out your environmental simulation well enough, you will wind up developing, tribes into nations. That's just what happens.
Peace is a much more volatile thing,
It is,
peace is in a strange way. Peace is a lot more of a interesting, like, period in time.
Well, it depends on what you're doing. If you're one of those guys who likes to run around shooting spaceships and, doesn't care what they're shooting it for, then yeah, you're not going to have a massive impact. No group of bandits is really going to take on the United States Marine Corps. It's just how it is.
No, but continuous groups of bandits can take out the infrastructure of the Roman Empire and eventually grind it down to the point where no one can actually live in the cities.
But
you end up having proxy campaigns and stuff like that, and those can be a little bit more interesting. They're also a situation as well where, like, smaller names, small, like, individuals, can actually make a name for themselves, can actually end up in a situation where they become notorious. Like, it's difficult to become notorious if you're not already established when it comes to massive wars. Like, because it's unfortunate, but it's not the tiny little, fledgling FCs that become, that make the grand moves in massive wars. Like,
right.
But you have a situation in smaller proxy wars and during peacetime that you can actually, as a smaller entity, as well as as an individual, like say an individual FC, to make a name for them yourself and to get your name and your recognition out there.
Right, and Caleb, you have to remember something about that whole barbarians thing. It wasn't the barbarians that had that effect. It was decades upon decades of internal mismanagement.
Yeah, that too.
Won't have that effect.
The bean counters failed, and the intelligentsia had moved, and the
Right.
all the people that were supposed to repair the stuff had moved
But
to east,
but
right?
that took decades, and it took generations to happen. And in MMOs, everything happens at an accelerated scale. I mean, we've gone from 0 to the Imperium in less than 20 years.
True. I'm just saying that if you do not have some sort of design where these things are a requirement, so you have to maintain your roads, you have to maintain your water supply, you have to maintain your supply lines for grain and stuff like that. If we don't have similar and equivalent design in EVE Online, things can't be disrupted, and then the N+1 becomes a problem because there is no assailability of these things. You can't do anything against them. You can't compete with them because they're going to crush you with the monopoly of violence.
At the same point, we do have that kind of supply chain right now, and it is unassailable, in effect. Really, it is. But if you try to make it something that you can disrupt, do you really think the modern EVE player is going to be willing to do freighter escort runs across Nullsec?
Well, it doesn't have to be that horrible. I'm just saying that the actual...
How do you do it? How do you replace the jump freighter?
I wouldn't replace it.
You don't replace the jump freighter. You just make the mechanic that the jump freighter utilize a little bit more, susceptible to not just a little bit more susceptible, but just like a little bit more
scale fuel consumption, right? So the cost to bring in, cost to bring in your fuel, right, to your infrastructure becomes more and more expensive the farther away you have to do it. So your supply line needs to be designed.
But that doesn't make it assailable. I mean, how do you let somebody disrupt that?
Yeah, that isn't disrupting. That's literally just passing on the additional cost that you've added to it to the end user. Like, that's all that happens there. Like,
but you are extending your requirements to pay for your upkeep. You're spreading that further and further away, which means that your attack.
How are you spreading that further away?
Well, because if the carrying capacity for, say, fuel from ice is only able to do X amount of units in a constellation, you have to expand to another constellation, or you need to actually import from, say, HiSec or any other trade hub. It's the whole balance of payment, the whole import-export stuff needs to be an intricate part of the game. And I'm not saying that I want it to be easy to disrupt big organizations, but they need to have pressure points and sensitivities. So you have these things like we have right now, which is the whole fuel and...
Okay, but imagine if the Imperium were only using Omar jump freighters. How do you disrupt that with what you're talking about, since we get Omar ice?
Well, that's an adaptation to make you less sensitive to disruption. That's fine. That's working as intended.
Okay, but everyone would do that. That's the obvious
adaptation. Then it's suddenly not sustainable anymore, right?
Right. I mean, ice is infinite.
Yeah, but you still need to throw man hours at it to get it, right? And if it's if the carrying capacity geographically is meaningful, then you need more and more ice belts available to fuel your war machine and your infrastructure.
But if you're making it by how much distance you're covering, which you'd have to, because that's the only real way to do fuel costs. You can't do fuel based on oh yeah, you're just sitting there in space using up fuel, because that just means nobody will sit in space. So it's going to have to be distance covered. Then, yeah, you just make sure you've got people providing ice within a certain radius of each, travel point. It's not difficult.
Well, as a goon saying that, it's fine. It's not necessarily
not even as a goon, because what you'd wind up with is people making their money with market centers that basically serve as truck stops.
Yeah, and that's actually a good thing. We need more of that, not less.
But those groups would slowly become amalgamated into larger concerns, as has already happened. It's just what people do.
Yeah, like you end up with contacts because someone's you find out that the ice that the fuel that you're purchasing every single time at a particular location is always from the same person. So you end up like eventually the astute people. Yeah, the astute kind of buyer will end up contacting that person,
and it
going
doesn't matter how much those people hate one another. After all,
if it's a good business, like
the perimeter keep star exists.
Yeah, that's also very true.
Like
for a little while,
all of the groups in nullsec that hate one another are cooperating in a massive trade cartel to suck the money out of highsec. And by the way, highsec players, if you don't like it, blow that shit up, I dare you.
Do something about it.
But everything you just said is working as intended. This is kind of what we want more of, because every time you have these affiliations, you also have potential of drama and people stabbing each other in the back and cartels disrupting and being destroyed.
The problem you run into is the acceleration of timescale online. So whereas in the real world, you get these systems and these systems get developed and they work really great until somebody retires or somebody goes away and somebody dies or a generation down the road. The time period for people to get bored of wretched peace in a game like Eve is
very quick.
Orders of magnitude smaller than the time it takes for the competent administrators to cycle out.
Yeah, and again, that sounds like a feature. That sounds like something that will create content.
That creates nothing. That creates everything working fine and nobody being able to disrupt anything because the competent administrators that you need to cycle out are still there.
Well, eventually they will be disrupted from inside. That's usually what happens.
Sure. After, 15 years, maybe.
That's not how long it usually takes. How long did OTEC survive?
CCP changed the game.
Otherwise, it would still probably be a thing today.
No, it was disrupting from internally already.
No, it wasn't. There was one bit of disruption where Vince decided that he was going to attack us before we kicked him out, so he got attacked and driven out of tribute. Otherwise, OTEC survived until CCP changed the industry game with the introduction of alchemy.
Yeah, but that would not really have done that much. I think the disruption was already happening.
It absolutely would have gotten rid of the bottleneck for technetium, and at that point, there's no point for OTEC.
I mean, there was the entire principle for doing it. Like, there wasn't any secondary reason for them bringing out like the alchemy changes.
They literally changed the game to break up the cartel.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of, because the cartel and the monopoly was near.
Not kind of. That's the reason they gave.
Yeah, but it would still what they gave would not have completely invalidated the cartel.
It absolutely would have.
No. It was not on scale. You couldn't scale the same effect, so you could still have kept that thing running. No, it would still have been profitable.
You couldn't. That's why it worked.
I mean, you could almost say that, like, the TTT is basically,
it basically is
the modern version of OTEC. Like,
right.
It's just we figured out that it's not based on technetium anymore because CCP basically brought in alchemy to basically to make sure that that's not a thing anymore. And so eventually we figured out that, like, taxes from highsec is the new OTEC.
And within a year of OTEC going away, we had the Botlord Accords.
Oh yeah,
which was another cartel set up between all of the same people.
And I still say that these things are features, not bugs.
Sure, but the point is that it took changes to the game. It took things that are not part of how the game works, but fundamental changes to how the game works to break up each of these things. There is no indication that there was any mechanic in the game that offset this tendency of people toward cooperation.
okay, so just as a thing, because I think we're a little in the weeds on this, right? But like, we were talking about how the game needs stability for large things to happen, for large player groups to be a part of things like. And
for any
we've been
group,
talking about things like OTEC and things like Botlord and all that kind of jazz, because they're basically the personification of players wanting to group together and create some kind of positive aspect out of stability, despite CCP's desire to break it all up.
It control market shares and dominance, and that's the whole point of this game, in my opinion. And you shouldn't design around it. Maybe you should help make it easier to disrupt something, but you shouldn't see a monopoly or a cartel or a big group organizing as a flaw of the game. On the contrary, this is proving that the game works.
It is proving that the game works, and it's also a great indicator as well that even though we have these large cartels, the bot lord kind of stuff, the OTEC, TTT. Like the TTT is the greatest example as well, because we've just come out of the largest fucking war in the game that the game has ever seen, and the longest fucking war that the game has ever continual cycle of war that the game has ever seen. While TTT and that agreement and that accord existed all the way through it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and my point,
the fact that these things can exist and the stability around can exist, basically means that you don't need, as a developer, CCP doesn't need to try and create a shitload of instability to create interesting and large scale events.
And the point I was making is that EVE Online, right, and CCP, which is an abbreviation for crowd control production, has created a game that basically birthed one of the biggest gamer organizations in the world. This is the biggest takeaway that CCP needs to pat themselves on the back with, that they have created an actual multiplayer game that works. Of course, it still has flaws, but the fact that monopolies and cartels and massive organizations are actually forming in this game is actually what proves that it works. And that's why trying to undermine trying to undermine these game designs and these emergent types of gameplay, you're killing your own fucking game.
So I want to address Daddy Deep here, right? And it really wasn't the Imperium exclusively crying about these changes. I mean, it was many organizations within the game that were out there.
Yeah, because Snuff is us, right?
Yeah, Snuff is us. They were complaining, but that must be good.
Moon mining is not a God-given right. We're said to snuff.
I know.
We're talking about corp ops.
And by the way,
let's not forget the fact that Vili got basically shut down in his own fucking in his own organization's Discord for trying to say that it's only Imperium who's complaining about this stuff.
Not only that is goons break the game. How do goons break the game, Daddy Deep? That makes no sense. The only thing that these changes do is, and since you're the biggest group in the game, your brain trust figures out how to get around them faster. Okay? And nobody has adapted to the game better than goons. And by the way, if you go back and look at the things that have actually broken the game, the first people to raise their hand to say, don't do that, CCP. What you're doing, CCP, will break the game with structures, with Rorquals, with any number of changes that they have done, right? So
point injections.
It's actually goons that say
we say break the game. It let's
be real
like
clear.
It's
Goons
not
can't
a
break the game. We can only play the game CCP gives us.
Yep.
So on all right, there's I need to qualify some things.
Wild Vili appeared,
saying, right? And also something that say people like that, like Daddy Deep, kind of keep on saying like, there seems to be this fundamental sort of belief that like it's a binary thing, like you do one thing and it breaks the game. Like you do one thing, it's not going to break the game, but like because this game is fucking huge. Right,
and the people it's CCP breaks the game, and it's basically goons that show where it's broken.
Don't fall into it, dude. Like what I'm trying to say here, what I'm trying to point out is the fact that like this game is very, very large. It's unlikely that one change is not going to break the game. And when I say break the game, I mean like the game is dead. There is nobody playing the game anymore. It is, an X game. Like, there's always going to be a situation where, somebody does something, CCP does something, goons just do something, NCPL does something, Pappy does something, and the result is not the game is broken, but the game is definitely diminished, right? And that's what we want to stop happening, is CCP diminishing the game, is other big groups diminishing the game,
Yeah.
And that's one of the thing that CCP is seems to be really, really happy about doing right now is diminishing the game for whatever fucking reason, and we're trying to prevent them from diminishing the game. We're trying to prevent them from breaking aspects of the game, breaking certain things of the game that essentially, takes the game into an area where fewer and fewer people are willing to play it.
One of the most beautiful things about EVE Online is that there are so many ways to play the game that it really would fit every play style, right?
Yeah,
and
that's the ultimate thing that you want.
What CCP? Yeah, you're right. What CCP is trying to do, it's trying to make you play the game the way they think you should play the game. And that's kind of anti-thematic to a sandbox, right? And that is probably the bigger turnoff, right? It's I like to play the game, and there are aspects of the game I like, but stop trying to make me play the game that you think is the best game for me to play, CCP, because you don't have a freaking clue why I play the game, right? They don't, and they seem to say
troll scepters will never be a thing.
Yeah, troll scepters will never be a thing. Really?
Because changes are fine. We'll just, if we have to, we'll just walk them back a little bit.
Yeah, and you walk them back a lot, and then they, and I have said this many times, they're just tone deaf to their own customer. And Rattati's, recent comments just exemplify that, right? He can't be wrong. He is so personally invested in these changes. They're not parts of his job. It's personal to him when you say these are bad ideas, Rattati, and he takes offense to them, and that's just wrong.
The stupid thing is that shows his
thin skin.
It's not just that. Like, it's his job. It's his profession, right? Yeah. You can say, "Oh, I take personal offense to this because it's my, this is what I do to make a living. Like, my life revolves around it." Yes, that's fair enough. That's true. But also, there's a very big thing when it comes to being a professional that you have to learn how to take professional criticism, right?
But it's also,
and you have to also learn that is not something that is personal to you.
But it's also laziness, I think. It's basically similar to all the changes throughout the last 8 years. I think the developers and CCP has reacted very similar to Rattati. It's like they are dismissive because they're lazy and don't want to actually go in and acknowledge and look at what is being said to them. When we said back in the structures focus group that removing the requirements of standing and star-based charters is going to have a huge impact on how Upwell is going to take over from process. and they just didn't want to listen to us, right? They said, it's not necessary, it's not that important, it's not going to mean anything.
And then structure spam.
But the other thing is like when the thing is the other kind of thing is like, you know, people will kind of say like, oh, well, if it's not if criticism isn't personal, you know, then why are people sort of, you know, telling, you know, saying that's, you know, that Rotati should quit, etc., 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 and you know, coming in with personal attacks. Well, the thing is, that's because we're not criticizing your professional work at that point. We're criticizing your personal viewpoint on why you feel you are correct.
Well,
or your personal sort of like your yeah, or your sort of like
on about there.
You can see and feel in the visceral reaction from Retardi and other devs, right? When they talk down to you and act like you're
I
just...
gotta take off, guys.
See you around. When you know they're the devs and they're high and mighty and they understand way more than you possibly could, and when they put that personal interjection into it, right, rather than having a conversation, right, which I have professional conversations all the time. Sometimes my ideas are good and better than somebody else's, and sometimes they're not, right? When you go to individual companies, and this is no different than going to an individual player, right? This company has rules and ways of doing things and implementing their technology, right? So that means when you implement over there, you change some of those rules, right? But to make them better, but some of those rules you integrate because that's how that company functions. Okay? And you go to company B and they may be different, so the solution to the problem becomes different. Okay? And again, the game is different to each player. When you close doors, players don't look for new doors. They just leave. Blackout was a prime example. You didn't want people to mine. Well, you had a whole ton of people who wanted to come home and mine and have some risk when they're mining because they like to have their capitals ready to come save their own Rorquals. Trust me, they did. But they wanted to come home. They wanted to have some beers with their friends because guess what? Their bar, their cheers, was over at the ice field. Okay? And that's where they went to, you know, calm down from work, have a couple beverages, have a couple laughs, right? Like at the bar. And they destroyed it. Those people just said, I'm gone. Because they closed my bar. And
they basically restricted your bar. Like they didn't close it as such, but they restricted it to the point where it was just like, this isn't fun anymore. This is just
they made it prohibition, and you didn't know when the cops were going to raid the bar. Right,
because it was essentially, you know, because the thing with like say mining in a Rourke in Blackout wasn't the fact that like you could get jumped by a bunch of like, you know, by a bunch of like dreadnoughts, like really honestly, because like if you're jumped by a bunch of dreadnoughts, like that could have happened just as easily without Blackout. The thing that irked like so many miners, so many Rorqual miners that went, you know, decided to go somewhere else and like literally to different IPs was because they couldn't mine using the things that they, you know, spent that they purchased to mine with, because there was that clear and present danger that like a single stealth bomber could just literally, or a couple of stealth bombers could literally just decloak and bomb their exhumers out of existence, and that was 5 bill, like just gone, 5-6 bill, just gone straight there. Like there was no way of preventing that. There was no way of you know, minimizing that in any way, shape, or form. Like, you know, it was just, you know, just you know, gone. Like, you know, and that leaves a bad taste in people's mouths, and just like, you know, if you're not gonna if it's just going to be, if this is what I'm looking forward to when I get home from work, fuck no, I'm going to go and do something else. And if you aren't providing that something else, then I'm going to go to a different IP.
Yeah, but you know, wormhole would open in your system. Hey, let's do the wormhole rolling thing. Hey, let's see if anybody's in there, right? So you had some varied gameplay, and I mean, it was nice, it was interesting, and other people learned how to do things that you know how to do. Like people don't know how to roll, wormholes. They learned, right? You had fun things to do. And if you did get dropped on, hey, you called people into gameplay that they wanted to play. And, sometimes people win and sometimes people lose. But when you made and tilted the playing field so far, right? And like I said, if you're going into a bar and it's prohibition and you don't know if it's going to be raided, you're not really there having fun. You're kind of on edge, just waiting for the police, but you got to drink because you're not alcoholic or whatever. I don't know, right? Or you just really want alcohol, right? That's what they made, right? And people don't have fun doing that. It's not fun.
Can I just say something to the Vault? The first rule of wormholes: we don't speak about wormholes.
I never felt the problem with wormholes mysteriously entering your system and posing a risk to your mining efforts. Right? I kind of thought it kind of worked, right? And we reacted appropriately.
Because that was a measured kind of thing. There was both positives and negatives for doing that. Like both for the wormholers doing it as well as the people affected by it. Like Initiative actually at a particular point started using wormhole generators in our iHubs to actually increase that amount, because we, in actual fact, like, yeah, fair enough, it increased the amount of potential wormhole wormholes that wormholers can come in and fuck with us with, but it also provided interesting new avenues for us to be able to go out and venture out from our kind of our territory. So
yeah, I mean,
the thing is,
but again, an example of a interesting and like an interesting balanced kind of bit of gameplay.
But this
is can we just look aside from Blackout for a second, because many of the things is that it feels to me like CCP comes in with this blanket low effort solution to a problem, or some feature that on paper was really looked really good, but because it's not iterated on, and because they don't go back and say, okay, what did the data show us and what is the actual gameplay of this thing, then you get this vestigial design that basically disrupt the game. My favorites is still something like Space Age, right? The whole fatigue thing is like, why are you doing this? Why are you adding an arbitrary, flat, hard limitation on something? Okay, it was overpowered. Force projection was a problem, but there is better solutions, because force projection was also gameplay. People like using that. So why are you creating a hard wall for something that is making people actually play your game? And this has been the case with so many of the things that CCP is trying to solve. They add this arbitrary hard limitation or complete nerf, like alchemy, that completely disrupted the ability to do Monopoly and do space control. Like, this is not how you solve this. You're destroying things that are actually creating content. Sure, if it's overpowered, rebalance it. You don't like the equivalent would be in World of Warcraft when the paladin was overpowered, that you said, well, you can only log in your paladin character 15 minutes a day. It's like, this is not a solution.
Well,
the other interesting thing about that is, like, there's been so many things that CCP has introduced that they thought was cool and that they put a lot of dev hours into generating and putting together, that, like, if it didn't perform, they just dumpster, they just throw in the bin. And it's like, you do realize that, like, that's not just you're not just like putting that feature in the bin. You're also putting all of the effort and all of the time,
Design,
the
yeah.
man hours that was built, that was set aside to create that in the bin as well. Like when you could potentially just take resource was a great one.
Right?
Like,
forward operating bases, fix them, please.
You can tweak a few things and spend a few more dev hours, like actually looking at at how it performed critically. What was the issues? Get in touch with some players, who like interface with it, like touch, experience that kind of that gameplay, more than others, and get their critical kind of sort of their feedback about it. And you could literally just, with a few more man hours, like actually put that back into the game as something that is actually value added to the game. Like, but instead CCP, in so many different ways, just throws stuff like that in the bin. Like,
it's just so tragic, because many of these things are ideas, even the things that are not played are good on paper, and they would work if they just went back and said, okay, how can we fix this? And it's the same with the other things that are broken. How can we fix this? And sometimes rolling back is actually the best solution. And then they need to stop doing this binary way of thinking that either it has to go to 10 or to 0. They have to do this incrementally, turn the knobs a little bit at the time and see what happens, and listen to some of the feedback. Because seriously, CCP, you need to rebuild your trust with the player base. You need to start trusting us to not be completely trying to game you. There are so many smart people in EVE Online. The player base is generally smarter than the developers in CCP. They have to start acknowledging this. I'm not saying that everyone is honest and in good faith, but the ones that are will really help you find solutions to some of these problems, and it will really make the game better. I'm not saying that you should only ask for one opinion. It's like with the doctor. If you don't like it, ask for a second opinion and see if there might be some sort of middle ground, because this game is still the best MMO ever made. You just have too many things that are kind of broken.
I would like to say though, for that, like, you can get a second opinion, but like don't just ask people until you find the opinion that you like. Like,
of course not, but listen to the feedback from both sides, right? Then, both sides.
Yeah. Get multiple opinions, but don't just cherry pick the opinion that you like out of the bunch. Like, look at the entirety of the opinions that are given to you and see those opinions for what they are. Like, see those opinions as, as a data set, and see what the average or the median of that data set, is, or what it's saying to you.
And when you have these weird situations where people like Erik and I agree, or when Wibbler and Olmeca agree, or this is where you need to start paying attention, because if people that are usually this diametrically opposed to each other agree on something, that might actually be really important to pay attention to.
Well, yeah, and I'll take you back to when they introduced jump fatigue, right? How did they not do the calculation that there are places in space that it would take months to get to and from? I mean,
there's also
months.
There's also so much more interesting gameplay elements that you can add to that. Like, you've got jump fatigue, right? But like, should that like, logically, that should apply to the character and not to the account, right?
Or better yet, to the ship and not to the character.
And to the ship and not to the ship and not the character. Or there should be, or if it is applying to the character, like it should literally just apply. We have, like, what do you do when you get fatigued, right? And you want to carry on doing something.
Yeah,
no. I don't mean in terms of games. Like, I mean in terms of real life, right? If you're fatigued about something, but you know that you have something you need to carry on and do it, like, what do you do?
You do it.
You take something that gives you energy or that keeps you alert and perked
did you just
right?
do a caffeine commercial here?
Why isn't that a thing in the game? Like, why isn't there something that helps take the edge off my jump fatigue? Right?
Exactly. If it's on the ship,
has negative effects.
If it's on the ship, you dock the ship, you boost it, and then you undock again, right? Stuff like that. There's way to solve this, which is not a horrible design.
And you can look at this by like, well, then people will just boost by removing use whatever they need to use to get rid of fatigue, and then carry on jumping. And then what's the point of fatigue? Well, you generate a different kind of a different negative from that, like that has very punitive things, like you take too many stims or too many kind of things to remove your jump fatigue, and you end up actually actively losing, like how
your ability to aim, right?
No, not just your ability to aim, but maybe you don't even jump to the system that you were planning to jump to. You end up jumping somewhere else, or maybe you end up actually losing some capacity, some cerebral capacity. You end up losing, jump Cal 5 suddenly disappears from your head because because fucking reasons.
Well, I would say that the idea of making too much caffeine and too many uppers impact your aim ability, that would be slightly realistic. If you've ever tried to shoot at a gun range, or if you're really high on caffeine, you're
so many different ways.
Yeah, it really doesn't apply much in the jump freighter area, but yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense.
But this is interesting. This is interesting things that you can do to the game to enrich it, to make it kind of, to make individual decisions actually, worthwhile. Like, and this is, and all we're doing is we're talking about jump fatigue here. Like, we're not talking about some massively super critical aspect of the game. Like, which is. This is just us.
And the reason we keep coming back
to the idea of jump fatigue.
The reason we keep coming back to jump fatigue is because it is this weird denial of play type of thing. It's very similar to the compression thing when it came out recently, right? Where I'm not against adding time bumps, but if you're adding time bumps that are so harsh that it becomes denial of play, you're basically saying you can't play for the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 48 hours, you have to just sit there and compress. Like, okay, then I can't play. You've basically taken away my ability to play the game. It's very similar to the arbitrary limitation on market orders that I can't boost. I can't trade another skill. I can't do anything. I can only open another account. This is not healthy game design, CCP. If you keep forcing me to add multiple accounts to solve my gameplay problems, you're going to eventually chase me away. Of course, there's people that are okay with multi-boxing 12 accounts, but what I would call normal people that don't like this level of micromanagement, they will just leave your game. If you're telling them, if you don't have 5 accounts, you can't play the game. It's like, okay, fine. If this is the requirement to play EVE Online on even a moderate level, I'm out. I'm just going to leave because it's not fun.
Yeah, and Jadagar over there says, isn't like power projection isn't denial of play. I don't necessarily know that I agree it's denial of a play. However, nobody here said the power projection didn't need to be limited. It's just the methodology of which they initially designed it, right? If you've designed a game feature that if you had to come from the farthest reaches of the game to civilization, that it would take you an actual month of gameplay in order to achieve, I think you might have made a poor decision.
And again,
do you remember what jump fatigue used
power
to be
projection
like?
was horrible.
Yeah, we're talking about original jump fatigue, not current state. Right?
Yeah, do you remember what jump fatigue used to do? It used to, if you max out your jump fatigue, good luck, wanting to play any kind of capital gameplay or any even sometimes even any subcap gameplay.
Was it 30 or 60 days in the original?
It was 30 days, I think.
Yeah.
I think it was 30 days, and then they dropped it to 7 days, and then they dropped it to 24 hours or something somewhere around about that. But it was just But
we just mentioned a few examples of things that could actually have had a similar effect, right? something like drug production is kind of complicated. So it will be really difficult to source enough of these uppers that McLeod was talking about to actually do the old school massive force projection. You would need a lot of uppers to actually do that effectively. The same with what I've been saying with fuel. If fuel consumption was scaled so it had diminishing returns, so the further you were trying to jump, the faster, the more fuel you used, that would have a market impact. We've already come up with two things that in combination would actually let you do force projection if you really wanted to, and if you planned it ahead, and if you actually wanted to pay through the nose, you could still do it. You have not removed the ability. That's a massive difference from what we have today.
Yeah, you still have to.
And that's even if you want to tie it specifically into drug production, in that situation, like if you're tying it into drug production, then you also tying in like these scenarios where, you know, if an organization wants to vertically, you know, integrate like you know, that production into, you know, their space, then that space, you know, well, logically, you know, having these uppers will also increase the value of the space with which you know, get the raw materials for that kind of stuff, right?
And again, if you combine them, right, so the ship hull carries one type of fatigue, but you can ignore that with your uppers, but the fatigue on the ship will still make your fuel consumption less efficient. This is actually a way where you then you have to park the ship for X amount of minutes or put it through a repair cycle that costs something material-wise to actually repair it, and then go out and jump again, right? But the point is, if you tie it to fuel and drugs or something like that, it becomes still possible but complicated. And this is really gameplay that EVE players like, because then they can game the system.
You know what's even funner about that whole kind of thing is if you start thinking about dependencies as well, like from a drug perspective, if you're using uppers to constantly get rid of drum fatigue, then and you start bringing in dependencies and sort of drug dependencies into it, like you can end up in the situation where, you know, you have to take those uppers
exactly
in order to not to get rid of drum fatigue, but to just get back to regular jump fatigue.
And this is very simple to code, right? Because if you just make it so that the downside compared to the upside of a drug takes longer to cool off, right? So the lasting effect of your benefit is less than the cooldown, then you will actually get this addiction phenomenon naturally.
Well, so
you like drugs and addiction, don't you?
Because drug production and drug smuggling was fun, and the fact that they nerfed it so it didn't make any sense anymore, I think was a tragedy. Because the whole thing of legality and the fact that you could maybe, if you were a drug runner, you could be tagged as criminal. If they then also had it so that criminals couldn't actually dock at NPC stations, or someone that's using or smuggling a certain item in a certain type of Empire space will become negative and can't use that space but can still do the same stuff in Galentis space. All that created so much gameplay, and they completely removed it.
Right. And the interesting thing about all these ideas that we're just kicking them around, right? We're pointing out that
we're showcasing what you can do if you're a CCP,
and we're using examples of, you know,
things we know about that already is in the game.
These were just bad decisions, and some people just know them as a little bit of a challenge now. But when you look at the bad decision that jump fatigue was in its initial concept, Rorquals were in their initial concept, right? I mean, these are things that people understood quickly as game people who play the game, but CCP just failed to understand. And by the way, CCP was also warned about their risk into the game well before they deployed them, and just chose to ignore the player base. So what we're exemplifying is poor decision making by CCP, poor customer service, and some of the things that they should have talked about before they did it, right?
Yeah,
that they clearly didn't do.
And there's two things I would like to just quickly touch upon, right?
Right.
Some things can't be easily predicted even by the players, like the compounding effect of things that have been launched into the ecosystem in an unbalanced way. It's very difficult to predict how bad it will be. Like we did have questions about skill points injectors. We did have questions about how self-sufficient with the null first and anomalies that could be respawned all the time. And we also had questions about the Rorquals, but no one could see how these things all in combinations and all these small changes that CCP made, how detrimental and destructive they would be for the actual ecosystem. I didn't see this coming. I only saw that after 2 or 3 years of running, that this was going bad. It was overheating, and people had, or CCP had kind of destroyed the initial premise design of how to train skills, right? I'm okay with catch-up mechanics, but CCP launched it in the wrong way. And the second one is CCP needs to trust the players more, to have a discussion back and forth and tell us about these ideas earlier, especially the CSM, because if they have already invested 6 months of developer time into something, they will do exactly the Rattati thing of well, you just don't understand what I've made. It's like, well, I do, and you've given me a too late chance to actually fix it. So now you've wasted time. So now you're either going to force this upon the player base, and it's going to go horribly wrong, or you're going to have to roll it back and acknowledge that you've wasted at least 3 months of development time.
I'm going to continue to clearly say that the Rorqual, in its initial inception, was 100% a financial plan by CCP to get people to buy skills, buy skill injectors, get all that stuff in there, and inject them into these particular things. Okay? And also, to, buy Plex so that they could finance the purchase of these Rorquals. It was 100% a financial play. And the only thing that will ever convince me that that wasn't is an online live conversation face-to-face that's projected between me and Hilmar, and him explaining how it wasn't 100% a financial move. Okay? And I also think a number of the things that CCP has done and tried to force into gameplay is the exact replica of that model. How can we get more money out of this game? And by the way, in some cases, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you do with the Rorqual, make it so, it's like, infinitesimal power, itty bitty living space, right? So we're going to spend, 15 billion to get into a Rorqual. And then you're going to nerf the fuck out of it. Okay? And then you're going to give us something else, which is this whole mining, scheme. Okay? It's a scheme. The whole mining changes that they've made is so that we will now pull all those skill points out for our Rorquals and stick them into these other things so that we can mine better, but not really achieve anything. Keep that under the covers. You're not really gaining anything, but we are letting you lose 20 or 30% of your skill points by moving them from one character to another or from one skill to the other. Okay? And, we're going to make more money out of it. Okay? And that's what it seems like to me as a player. You are trying to run a scam, CCP, in moving all these skills and things around. If it wasn't a scam, you would just let me move my skill points. Right? Just let me reset my skill points once a year, once every other year, and just move them around wherever I want. You would make no money off of it, but you would actually show that this isn't a scam. I just think it's a scam.
No, it feels like it. It feels very much like a bait and switch, right?
It is.
And I understand that CCP needs to do some things to incentivize some sort of monetization and more login time and more credit card swiping. That's fine. That's what you do as a business. But if you do it in a way where you're coming off as dishonest or forcing people to credit swipe to even play the game, then you're going to get people to actually leave instead. You're going to have a lot of people staying that are going to credit swipe for you, but the people that you lose are potentially never coming back. And this is detrimental to an MMO business model, because MMOs are not a big one-up investment. It's a long-term investment. The fact that, well, maybe I haven't paid, I didn't pay that much money this year, but over the past 18 years, I have paid several thousand of dollars into CCP's coffers. That's your model. It's a slow burn. It's not a quick fix.
By the way, and Jodagar, I got to address Jodagar in there, right? So, he thinks I want the Rorqual to stay as powerful as it was. No, I'm going to tell you the Rorqual should have never been that powerful. But the only reason to make it super powerful when everybody in the face of the earth said don't do it was to get that money from that mass use of the Rorqual because they knew we were going to use them, right? So they got all the money from that. And now they said, okay, we're going to nerf it down, nerf it down. And then, we have all these new things in this new mining scenario for the, the Hulk and the Procure and all this other stuff. Just move your skill points over and have the massive loss of skill points too. Lowering the power of the player, right? And pulling money out of his pocket at the same time. I am all for paying CCP for this game. I love paying CCP for the game. And if you had useful things for me to buy, I would buy them. But don't do this bait and switch bullshit.
And this is why, if you want money over time, you change things in small increments to improve this by doing some proper data analytics on who is actually paying and why and when. If you need a big cash in because you are missing cash for something, you do that by doing out-of-game stuff, right? Things that are more in the soft market, in more income focus on FanFest and EVE events and on things like comic books and all that stuff. There's plenty of ways to monetize without destroying EVE. You have to understand that EVE is like a garden that you prune every month. If you disrupt that with this bait and switch stuff, you're going to end up destroying the garden.
There's so many ways of monetizing EVE that CCP haven't done, and there's also methodologies of monetizing, like that CCP just fail on.
Why have they not told us that you can get all the source books as PDFs on that new website that's got the comic? Why haven't they advertised this? I didn't know this.
It's not even that. Like classic example, right? They're releasing new mining ship skins right now, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. Mining ships. They've made changes in the mining ships, so mining ships have come up in conversation and stuff like that, like fairly recently. But the thing is, they're nerfing them. They're kind of like they're removing their capacity and the ability to sort of mine kind of stuff. So there's less people mining, right? And so they decided that this is, for some reason, that this is the perfect time to hopefully increase the amount of sales of ships, of like skins to ships that people are going to be flying less. How does that fucking make sense?
No one knows, because actually they think there's gonna be more miners out there with these changes.
They somehow think that nerfing mining and because it is you are nerfing mining. They somehow think that nerfing mining will increase the amount of miners. In some
that's really weird,
random ass way, some random backwards ass way. But this is a classic example of CCP not understanding how to utilize how to properly monetize their game.
I just have a problem believing that. I mean, nobody in business is that stupid. I mean, really? I mean, I've seen some stupid things in my life.
There's only there's only two things that are infinite: the universe and human stupidity. And I'm not entirely certain about the universe.
Caleb, you, me, McLeod. I mean, we need to be sitting there across from Hilmar and maybe Ratatouille, and
have so many ideas.
Blowing these, not sharing ideas with them, saying, "What the fuck were you thinking?" I mean, I want the honestly, what the fuck interview. I do.
If nothing else, if there is a CCPer listening to this in some way, shape, or form, I will give you a bunch of ideas on how to monetize the game in ways that will be a lot better than the way than methodologies that you do at the moment. And in a much more sustainable way as well as what you do at the moment, for free. You can have them for free. Just get in touch with me,
and
they may not be something that you can implement straight away, or sort of like have like a junior dev like write a tiny bit of code to sort of implement straight away. But like the amount of time and effort into coding, sort of like some new monetization methods will be more than worthwhile.
And as I've said this before, right?
Put into it.
CCP needs to do the equivalent of their own Kickstarters, right? So they give you 3 options of things in their product development thought and monetization ideas, and you give Plex to the thing that you like the most. And that is actually direct proof of what will sell the best. You can do this very easily. So if you have a problem trying to figure out how to monetize on us and what we want to buy, ask us, poll us, do ISK starters. This is not rocket science, because we have plenty of money. We are all way too old because of the age of the game. So we have money. We do want to buy shit from you. Ask us what we want and we will tell you.
Yeah, I have no idea. I have no problem with interesting monetization. And we do have to do one last thing because I got to get rolling. So if we can do that, I'd do that. I'd start with you, Caleb.
Well, I would just stay a little bit on the whole thing of monetization, because we've talked about this before on this show. I know from how CCP have the skills that the developers have, that there's so many things that they can do, especially with things like skins. Why do skins only have to be something that covers an existing model? Why doesn't it change the model a little bit so skins actually becomes variants of, say, the ship that it goes on?
Why can you only have one skin? Why? Yeah. Like in the modern fucking age, especially in the age where, like, we all have access in some way, shape, or form to programs that like art programs that utilize multiple layers. Why do we only have one layer of skin, like for ships? Like,
and again, just if we got something like that, right, where skins actually does something a lot more meaningful to the change of the models. And if something similar was operating on our structures, that what we have installed actually changed the look of the structure, or what skin we applied completely changed the style and the feel of the structure. And we know this is something that, at least on this show, we completely agree on. The art team in CCP are amazing. So this is possible. This is not out of this world and armchair developer begging. This is something we know they can do. We have seen some of the things that's been shelved. These guys are amazing. Let them be part of the monetization, please.
And there's a lot of other ideas with regards to that are great monetization schemes. Schemes always sounds like a much more sort of like underhanded thing, but you know what I mean. Like, there's strategies would be a good better word for it. But like, there's a multitude of different things that CCP can do in terms of strategy for monetization that they're not doing. Just get in touch.
All right, is that your one last thing?
Yeah.
All right, my one last thing is Hilmar. Ratatouille. We're here for you. You want to chat? We're there, but we're doing it live. All right, everybody. You have a wonderful weekend. Excuse me. Sorry. Thank you for putting up with my coughing and other things. And thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Cloud. I think it's been a great show, and everybody else who joined in horrendous. Hope you guys enjoyed it out there. We will be back next week, which will have to be
the Christmas show,
the pre-Christmas show. So there we go, everybody. You have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. Get prepped up. And I think my trash cans are blowing around outside, so I better go get them because we like 50-mile-an-hour winds here right now. So everybody, please take care.
Can McLeod come as a reindeer next show?
Anything he wants to do, man. I mean, you guys, you've been here long enough.
You may get meow Cloud. You never know.
I might have to have hot buttered rum. I don't know. We'll see. Take care, everyone. You have a wonderful day, wonderful weekend.